We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you've seen the agenda. Are there any questions, concerns about the agenda? If not, do we have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll restate the agenda items. We have 4 items on the consent agenda, and you see those before you. We have a district operations report, the fire chief's report. We have no unfinished business. Under new business, we have proposed board policy P2004, whistleblower. We have, on B, we have 2022 through 2025, strategic plan presentation. We welcome Dr. Margaret Banyan to do that. We have approval to surplus 2 district assets. At this point, we'll take public input on non-agenda items. Seeing no public input, we'll close that portion. Consent agenda, any questions about the 4 items? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Carries 5-0. Fire chief report. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. Good evening, Commissioners and community. I'd like to take this opportunity first and foremost and wish you all a belated Happy New Year and best wishes for a prosperous and healthy 2022. I'd like to highlight some community service milestones from our team with Battalion Chief Terry Brunson with 21 years, Battalion Chief Jacob Lamb with 20 years, Lieutenant Sean Jensen, 13 years, Driver Engineer Paul Russell with 13 years, Life Safety Specialist William Genovrino with 9 years, and Support Service Coordinator Trevor McCure with 1 year. These individuals reflect a total cumulative years of service to the community of 77. I'd also like to highlight the following promotions which occurred through October and December, with Christopher Arminger being promoted to Lieutenant, Randall Krause being promoted to the Assistant Fire Chief of Health Services, and of course Colleen Brooks, who was promoted to our Human Resource Manager position. I'd also like to take a moment and highlight some individuals who served our community for a while and decided to transition their careers. Firefighter Natalie Wickman, Firefighter Andrew Dominguez, and Assistant Fire Chief Vincent DiCristofalo. As we all know, we're a small organization and everybody is valued and everybody is appreciated. We always hate to see when somebody transitions or chooses to transition to a different career path. We thank them for their service while they were here, and we wish them all the best in their future endeavors. I would like to give you some exciting news that we have 3 new firefighters who joined our team. Sophie DeClerc, Brandon Pujol, and Jesse Miranda. They started with the district in their journey with us on December 6th. They've completed the orientation, and man, they have hit the streets running. They are excited, they're engaged, and just absolutely happy to be here, so we're proud to have them on our team. As you know, the district is actively recruiting for various positions, from firefighter EMT, firefighter paramedic, and some administrative positions. A big thing in October we implemented was the concept of a shift executive, which takes our assistant fire chiefs, our 3 assistant fire chief positions, and pairs them with one battalion, so a battalion chief who typically oversees a shift, has one-on-one supervision. This system is going to allow us for a common sense approach to employee development, mentorship, as it exposes our staff and our company officers and our battalion chiefs to a lot of different areas of the organization, and it also provides an opportunity for some positive employee engagement and growth opportunities. Unfortunately, as the holiday seasons, as you all know, started going into high gear, we had to deal with the new variant of COVID-19, which was less lethal, thankfully, but was far more transmissible. That required the district to take some more precautionary measures with our services and reinstitute some protective measures to ensure the health of the community as well as our workforce. This new variant also coincided with a very nasty case of viral bronchitis and seasonal flu, which has resulted in an incredible strain on our local healthcare system, as well as emergency medical services. Hospitals are understaffed, overwhelmed. This combination and multitude of events has led to increasing ambulance offload times, as we were discussing before the meeting, is a problem nationwide. I've also had the opportunity to interact over the last couple of months with various partners at Lee Health as well as Lee County Division of Public Safety. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them for their commitment and their partnership as we navigate truly historical times. Also had the opportunity to interact and speak with some of our frontline healthcare workers in the hospital. And I will tell you that the fatigue on these people, it's easily visible, but what's even more visible is their commitment to take care of sick people and their compassion for their professions and those they serve. So on behalf of the district, I would like to just thank all our community healthcare workers for their dedication, their service, and their passion, not only locally, but regionally and nationally as well. I will also, since Deputy Fire Marshal Campbell, Fire Official Campbell is up in Tallahassee at the Certified District Manager Program, I'm going to be giving her section of my report. Life safety was extremely busy over the last 3 months, averaging 380 inspection activities and averaging 40 permits being issued. We definitely have had some good revenue months in terms of billing for our partnerships with San Carlos Park, Captiva, as well as our own jurisdiction, averaging approximately $39,760 in fees that we were able to recapture. And there's a lot of community development and redevelopment going on. Big projects, we have a new 71,000 square foot self-storage facility that's going on San Carlos Island. Our partners with the United States Coast Guard are also getting a brand new home. They have a complete tear down and a rebuild of the Coast Guard station. And we also have our partners with the town have started with their renovations of Bay Oaks, constructing a new entrance and an open air fitness and parking space area, and many, many more community development and redevelopment projects are ongoing. And major district events that are coming, check your calendars, is the annual Shrimp Festival, March 12th and 13th at Lynn Hall Park. So excited to see that getting started again. And with that, that concludes the Fire Chief's report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Ron. Next item, District Operations Report. Scott Worth.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the people in the public, Scott Worth, your new District Chief of Operations for the department. Since we did the restructuring, the operations branch now has support services, health services, and then professional standards and safety, professional standards being our training group. So for the last quarter of the year, October through December, the department ran 910 calls. That brought 1,500 vehicle responses, so some of those calls had multiple units. Some significant events that we had, unfortunately, we had two fatalities in a jet ski accident. We had another fatality in a moped accident on the south end of the beach. We had a small fire in a shrimp boat at the shrimp docks, and a minor fire in a structure on the north end of the island, which was contained. It was an outside piece of equipment and took part of the outside of the house, but the crews got on it quickly and did a real good job of taking care of that. We also had two additional structure fires that we responded to through our automatic aid agreements with the other departments and our neighboring departments, one on Sanibel and one on Iona. So everybody did a great job and came home safe.
Great.
So we're excited about that. For training for the quarter, some of the high points in the training were that we had the ability to do vehicle extrication, which is basically using the jaws of life to cut cars away from injured people. So thank you to our partners at Alligator Towing for taking cars and flipping them and smashing them and piling them up so we can cut them and figure out how to get people out. We appreciate that. We were able to do live fire down in Bonita, so we had live fire session. Our new firefighters, the chief mentioned, were able to get in on that. That was in the month of November. So they've got some good training down there. And then for our EMS training, we were able to hit on congestive heart failure. We were able to hit on traumatic injuries, immobilization, and then we also did quite a bit of work for this quarter on pediatric type emergencies. For our support services group, some of our high points are props to Trevor, our support services coordinator. He has been working diligently to get our lighting switched over. Station 32, I'm happy to announce, is almost done, so completely switched over to LED lighting. And then also, if you've noticed Station 3 and the new garage doors on the front, Trevor is in the works with getting the front doors at Station 32 replaced. So that would be a big upgrade for that station. And then also, if you're down at Station 3, you'll notice that the wall behind the station was looking pretty bad, and we got that cleaned up and got new fresh paint on it. So,
Thank you.
my pleasure.
People at Estero Cove condominiums, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing it forward. Anything else out of the ops report? Thank you.
Scott.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Scott.
Is Jane?
No.
Okay, thank you so much. We have no unfinished business. Next, new business, proposed board policy P 2004 whistleblower. And I'm going to allow Chief to introduce that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this evening, what I have before you, after we had reviewed your board policies, one of the things we had discussed is the need for a whistleblowers policy and a global policy on a higher level strategic level, which is all of you to set for the district in terms of expectations for if we should ever have any improprieties or any issues that need to come forward, that they can be reported and those reporting parties will be protected and the matter will be thoroughly and independently investigated. Staff and I highly recommend this policy for your consideration and approval this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, we'll take any public comments, and seeing none, we'll close that portion. And discussion. John?
I think it looks good. You know, we kind of initially looked at this in our retreat. Mr. Salzman's looked at it, and everything's good to go on the legal side.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. That's all I have.
Jackie?
None, that was going to be my question. So, thank you.
Okay. Ron?
Nothing.
Jim?
Nothing.
Okay, and I have nothing except to applaud the chief for being the person initiating this whistleblower concept, because you're obviously one of the people that they could blow the whistle on. So I appreciate your stepping up and instigating this. So seeing nothing else, do we have any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for a motion to adopt the fire chief and staff recommend that the Board of Fire Commissioners adopt this proposed policy. So, someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0.
We'll get a copy of that for you to sign.
Thank you. The next item, 2022 through 2025 strategic plan presentation, and I'll pass it over to you, and you can introduce our guest.
All right, Commissioners, I'm very excited. This is a policy that Chief Love, or this is a process that Chief Love started prior to me being your new fire chief. We've engaged Dr. Margaret Banyan, who's done a phenomenal job in the past for us. So she has once again been doing some fabulous work and has a finalized draft of the 2022-2025 strategic plan for your consideration for adoption this evening. So without further ado, Dr. Banyan.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good.
Hello.
So I can see a portion of you, which is great for now. When and if you have questions, I can hear you fine. so looking from the camera towards you. So I really want to thank you for all of your time and effort on this project. I know that I leaned on you at several times during the process, and that was really valuable to develop the plan. And I also want to just thank you for hosting me remotely. I had hoped to be there, but sometimes the pandemic just doesn't always allow us to do what we wish. So that's been limiting. But I do have just a hopefully not too long and hopefully not too boring presentation for you, just as an overview for the plan. So I'm going to share my screen in a second. But just before I do that, I want to kind of remind you a little bit about the importance of what you're doing here. And as we talked before, the strategic planning can be really important for setting priorities, really very important for the leadership, and important for you to be able to kind of look at this plan, hopefully, and make some decisions as you go along in your budget process or go along in your own evaluation. And the other thing I think that's really helpful is it helps you in many ways when citizens are requesting certain services or when they have questions. You can always kind of go back to some of the work that was done in this plan to look at it and think about it as a touchstone. At the same time, the plans are not meant to be set in stone, because we know that things do change and things can change fairly rapidly. So with a strategic plan, just I think keep in mind that while you have big strategies and big priorities, some of the details can change. And so it should be a document that you use, but not a document necessarily that is so rigid that you can't stray from it. So I really encourage the use of the plan. And Chief and I have had lots of really good conversations about how to use the plan. So with that, I'm not going to take more of your time about that, but just want to kind of give you sort of an overview. And I hopefully you're seeing my PowerPoint at this point.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just want to give I'm not going to go over each one of these things in detail. Much of this is already in the document. And the important part of the document really is the first several pages. The latter part of the document just reports on the community survey. So this is in the plan, and I just want to kind of highlight the process overview where the beginning of the process was a lot of data collection, and that's where you see when I interviewed you one-on-one and held several different focus group meetings with different, almost a 365-degree view of the district. And so several different entities, and also hosted that online community survey. So a lot of the strategic planning process does end up being in that data collection piece, because really trying to get to what is, when you see things kind of align, you're getting to some areas that you want to think about and set some priorities around. So, and then we moved into a phase where after the data analysis just started looking at what were the results, how did the feedback align, and then I worked with the chief and his leadership team to start to develop some priorities and some implementing measures. And that's the big summary about what you see here before you today. So I want to talk about a little bit about what you're seeing in more detail in this plan. So we started out with the mission, vision, and values that the district had in place. And there was really not much indication that any of those needed to change. And so the mission, vision, and values that you saw in your previous plan are very consistent with what you're looking at now. And that's okay, and that's pretty typical, where Chief Love had spent quite a bit of time working on this mission, vision, and values. And I didn't hear much in the process, if anything, that would suggest any changes here. So that's good, and that's kind of good news, because you can continue on with refining some of your other priorities as they've developed over the past 3 years. So I want to talk a little bit about the data collection and input and some of the things that were found in the process. First of all, what you'll see in the plan, and it's under different headings, but as towards the beginning of the strategic plan, you'll see a section and several sections that are more or less on existing conditions. And so some of those existing conditions, some of them are public educational pieces. What's the district about? What's the population looking like? What are the district boundaries? And then in this plan, we updated a lot of the areas on service data, as well as finance data and major accomplishments. So that's a nice thing to be able to carry forward, is to look at where you were and where you've been, and just look at what are the existing conditions, because sometimes those will help inform any priorities that you may start to develop. One thing that is, I'll just note, and part of the reason why I put this call volume chart here, is that because you've seen some of this data already, I'm sure, that your EMS calls as a percent of your total calls remain very consistent. There's no surprise there. Same with fire-related calls. They remain very consistent as a percent of your total calls. Here what you see is a bit, so there's a trend line that's in dark green. What you're seeing there is that the total calls dipped, and when the total calls dipped, it happened to coincide with the very early sort of down the pandemic. There was you could see a dip there, and then starting in 2021, the call volume started to rise again. So I just put that trend line there for your information, mostly so that you could kind of see how this was looking historically. But again, no surprise in terms of the kinds of calls that the district is responding to. The finance piece that you'll read through, again, sort of very consistent approach, and there's some suggested goals later on in terms of where you want to start to focus your energy around the millage rate that is getting close to the cap. And then again, there's the major accomplishments piece. And I want to say here, it's always a pleasure to be able to go through those major accomplishments, because until you start to look at them over the past 5 years or 3 years, it's hard to always remember what great work has been done, and really important initiatives and things that took some time to develop. So if you haven't read that piece, it's a really good pat on the back, and something I think that you can share with the public pretty effectively. The other part of the process is, so after existing conditions, really looking into what stakeholders are saying. And so when I say stakeholders, what I mean by that is the commission, the citizens and the residents, the businesses, as well as the staff and the operational staff, as well as administrative staff. So all of those groups are stakeholders. And so when I'm completing the data collection, and typically I'll take a step back and start to try to categorize what some of these priorities and feedback look like. So typically there's kind of a concern section as well as a priority section. What did the data say about what these concerns were? One of the major concerns, and this has not changed much since 2018, it's a little different nuance, but organizational sustainability remains to be one of the concerns. And I'm not going to say that it's an overwhelming concern. It's just something that was noted several times. And organizational sustainability from a big picture perspective. So employee and staff retention continues to be something that's on the minds of both the public and the organizational personnel. Fiscal management is another thing that continues to be on folks' minds. And that's sort of a forward-looking kind of thinking about what is this going to look like in the next 10, 20 years. And then district communication was something that largely citizens brought up, although, again, this wasn't a major, I would not call this a major concern. It was just something that was noted by citizens, is that they were really loved the opportunity to be able to communicate with fire commissioners as well as with the chief and the personnel. So that kind of rose to the level of kind of a concern. And then the other priorities that were suggested here were really around service delivery. So again, sort of taking a higher level view about the priorities. All of the feedback, for the most part, was we love having good service, and so our priority is service and service delivery. And so the second priority, capital expenditures, the comments around capital expenditures were capital expenditures should enhance service delivery. And then comments around operations, personnel and fiscal stability was a concern because the priority again is service delivery. So you really see a lot of alignment around services, and that's good news because you're pretty good at that. And the way I know that is because we also asked the question of citizens where their feedback, and this has risen from the previous years, is we asked them to rate how well the district did in meeting the needs of the stakeholders, and 60% said very good, and that's higher than the previous survey. So the district's making inroads here. There's it was marked when I did the focus groups, how many people commented that they really appreciate the people in the district. That goes from line personnel to leadership. And so the community feedback was overwhelmingly positive in terms of the collaborative nature of the district, where they're feel like they need help, the district's going to step in and help. I mean, it was very significant in terms of the feedback. So the next piece on data collection is around what we talked about this, I think, in my interviews with you, but also talked about it when we were prepping for this planning process, is the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And in your strategic plan, there's more than what's listed here on your screen. And those are the sort of the big categories. And on this presentation, I just picked the biggest of the big. So the SWOT analysis looks at strengths and weaknesses from your current perspective. What are the current strengths and weaknesses of the district? And again, community collaboration, community engagement, financial stability, professional and committed personnel really rose to the top in terms of the current strengths. The current weaknesses, again, we talked about this a little bit, in terms of there was concerns over stability of personnel and turnover. And so across the board, there's a recognition that the, turnover and employee relationships, employee engagement, employee training, that those things are current weaknesses that you can think about working on. And then No surprise, traffic and congestion and how that impacts response time is a weakness. And then another weakness is around resistance to increased fees by the fire district. In terms of the future, that we look to the future for planning priorities as well. So future opportunities and future threats. And that's always a really engaging discussion because we were able to reach out to the other public organizations and businesses to help develop some of these opportunities and threats. So redevelopment and redevelopment potential is both an opportunity and a threat. We know that with redevelopment, there can be some fee benefits in terms of impact fees. And at the same time, redevelopment also brings different kinds of population and may, if there's increased density, pose some limitations and implications for service delivery. And again, if kind of traffic is a problem now and more residents or more people coming on an island, there's some concerns whether that's a future threat. We know that there's a changing demographic and it appears that the tourist population is changing some, and so that's an opportunity in some ways because you may find kind of different kinds of support for the fire district. You may also find a different service delivery pattern with different demographics. It also, there's a new contract with employees, and that's a future opportunity to continue to develop good relationships. And the new fire station was noted several times as a future opportunity. A future opportunity for which you all know because many of you talked about this in your interviews, but opportunity for collaborative spaces, an opportunity for different kinds of services to be considered on the part of the property that you're not currently using. There was a lot of energy and excitement around the things that could be developed as part of that new fire station. So recognizing, of course, that you've not made any decisions yet about where that's going, but a lot of folks saw that as an opportunity. In terms of some additional threats, again, traffic and congestion remains to be a threat. The development of San Carlos Island, paying attention to how that's going to affect your service delivery is a future threat. And then there's other threats in terms of climate and water quality that all across the board may impact your service delivery, may impact your emergency response, may impact the folks that are coming to the island. And then there's also a continued and growing threat to cybersecurity. And, as we were developing this plan, realized there had been cyber attack on some systems. So that's probably not going to go away anytime soon, but is also really important to pay attention to as the cyber threat continues. So out of all of that data analysis, and I know I've talked quite a bit about that, there's I'll step back and do some analysis and start to think about and suggest where I'm seeing some different priorities develop, and this was very collaborative, this priority setting with the district leadership. And so in the analysis portion, you will also see this in your plan. And again, I won't go into this chart in any great detail. What this is if you sort of look at all of the existing conditions, if you look at the feedback that you got from all of your stakeholders, then it starts to kind of reveal kind of where the gaps and where are the issues that can start to suggest some strategic priorities. So those are, again, they're in your plan, but those are separated into these 5 different focus areas. And the 5 different focus areas, of course, is stakeholder and citizens, sort of the external environment, financial, and then operational, life safety and support. So more or less that category is around what's your service delivery, are there critical issues or gaps in that area that you need to think about that can suggest priorities. And then the 4th being employee growth and development, and then the last being governance. So governance more being what is the fire commission focus, what is your focus, and sort of what's in your bucket to think about in terms of priorities. So really the great news is a lot of these priorities you're doing very well in, and so there are things that you can continue to focus on. This kind of chart helps you kind of understand where, it's intended to be a full picture of the organization. So it shouldn't, when you develop your priorities, it helps you to remember there's this operational piece out there, there's a community piece out there, there's a financial piece. So that's the importance of this critical issues and service gaps chart and analysis. So again, I talked a little bit about these different strategic plan perspectives, and those are, again, separated into those areas of external. So in the green, the stakeholders and financial is kind of what's happening between the district and the external environment. So of course your financial is based on things that are happening in the, things that may be happening in the market, or things that are happening in terms of home value in your millage rate. So those green are kind of the internal, external perspectives. The blue is more or less your internal. What are the things that you have a lot of control over? And those are operations and learning and growth. And then mission and governance, I think, is always in the middle. You've got a lot of policy decisions that you make as a commission, and so it's important to continue to focus on what's the mission and what's the governance of the fire district. So in the charts that you'll see in your plan, you see this strategic priority-based plan. And so it's framed around strategic priority. And many of your strategic priorities really shouldn't change, and shouldn't change all that much, because again, you're focused on those 5 major areas. So they should be long range, your strategic priorities. They should be measurable in terms of looking for outcomes. And then you'll also see a section on objectives, and those objectives are more specific. Those objectives do tend to change from strategic plan to strategic plan, because there are ways that you're going to continue to work on your priorities. They're also very measurable in terms of critical tasks that you're going to be addressing as part of a way to get to your priorities. One thing with the critical tasks, I'll just kind of note, is that it's not exclusive. It's not meant to be a checklist. It's really meant to be kind of what are the major areas of focus that the chief can take and start to assign to personnel or work on himself. So those are kind of big chunks, things that we know now that need to be addressed as part of that objective. So then again, there's kind of a timeline, the LC, and then an internal champion. Because it's a district and the organization is a system, if you've got an internal champion, that person or that position can tend to drive that priority or drive the objective. So that's the way your tables are formatted. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about the different strategic priorities. I think they're very clear to read, but overall, 1 and 2 have stayed pretty stable in terms of kind of helping stakeholders to feel safe and help them sort of have sort of this perception of safety. And that suggests some educational programs. And then opportunities for stakeholder engagement. What's new there is I did hear a lot in the process throughout about opportunities for remote access or opportunities to understand what's happening with the fire district. That said, overall, the feedback from the community survey is people are pretty happy with the fire district. So the opportunity for community access wasn't driven around any unhappiness. It was really driven around, hey, we really want to support the fire district. How can we learn a little more? So that's always good to hear. Now, in terms of financial perspective, that's the next big chunk. This 3 and 4, in terms of a financial perspective, you're looking at kind of 2 things. How are you going to get revenue in? And then how are you going to continue to be efficient when you are expending your funds? And so one of the things that is, the priority 3 has not changed in terms of implementing financial and revenue strategy to sustain the organization. That stands the test of time. And there's some other initiatives in there that you can consider in terms of how to analyze the financial perspective, how to monitor the funds, how to continue to plan for facility replacement, equipment replacement, and then looking at assessing the costs and benefits of additional resources. So one of the things you know that in the community survey, folks will suggest, hey, we need X equipment. That may or may not be something that is financially feasible. So when those things come up, the critical task around that priority may be to assess the cost and benefits of those additional resources. And then the other piece in terms of operational efficiency is you'll see sort of that IT infrastructure and the cybersecurity concerns. There's a growing need to continue to develop a cyber resilience plan and really think about how you're protecting your critical data. I'm almost done, I promise. So in terms of your internal operations, you're already working on your risk assessment and the community risk assessment and the standards of cover document. So reducing community risk, again, has been a long-standing priority. And so there's some things you're doing pretty well there, and you already have some initiatives that are suggested in terms of responding to those documents that you're in the process of adopting. And then 6 is really around efficient and effective response to emergencies. And in terms of that, that's a concern for how are you equipping the personnel to respond to emergencies. And again, this is around effectiveness more than around saving money. It's really more around quality of service. And so that's how you see sort of number 6 is kind of how are we responding to emergencies and do we have the equipment we need? And then internal operations, again, sort of the communication through the district affects internal operations. So that providing some additional forums for organizational communication is something that is, I know that is on the chief's mind, and I don't want to speak for him, but I know that that's an important initiative for him. And then this achieving excellence as a high-performing organization, that's one of the priorities that has been slightly amended from the previous year. And really that's around thinking about how does the district continue to make inroads to perform at a very high level. And again, again, that's in the internal operations perspective, because it's something that is in, somewhat in your control. And that's really, some of those initiatives are around developing policies and procedures, addressing employee culture, and I'll talk a little bit about this performance review process, but just note that is part of achieving excellence. But I'll talk about that a little bit. And then in terms of employee development, the priorities about recruiting and training the workforce continue to be at the top of the list in terms of priorities. Recruiting for excellence, and then ensuring that current employees meet their job performance requirements and that they have the opportunity for growth and development. So it's really supporting the employees that are here, and also as you recruit, having a mind towards recruiting with excellence. And then number 10 is ensuring capacity to meet the needs of the organization. And that's a longer term perspective in terms of implementing a leadership and retention plan that maybe will last for 10, 15, 20 years. And so it's always something that should be on the mind of public organizations. How are we going to continue this over the next, 20 years down the road? Who's going to be in line? And then the last piece here in terms of the commission plan is really the big priority, utilizing the strategic plan to guide the organization to perform at that high standard. And so 11A is something that you possibly tonight can check off your list of things to do, and that's finalizing the current strategic plan and using that as a guide. And then the other piece is assessing the financial strategies to ensure sustainability and excellent service. So those are kind of your more or less sort of high-level commission proposed priorities. Then the last thing I'm going to talk about before I stop all this screen sharing is the performance measures. And so what occurred, normally what you saw in your 2018, your last strategic plan, was a suggested list of performance measures. And the district had made some inroads on what those performance measures should be, and that was intended to be part of this process, is to finalize those measures. What happened in between was that the Florida legislature passed 189-0695, and that piece of legislation mandates that fire districts conduct these performance review processes, and that they work with an independent consultant to conduct that performance review. And there's a list of things that are required in terms of assessing the purpose and goals of the district, the goals and objectives, service delivery, alternative service delivery. So there's this whole list of things that the legislation requires that be part of this performance review. That process is to launch in October of 2022. So part of the strategy here in your strategic plan is to not get sideways of that process. And so we want to be efficient here in terms of if this specific plan said we're going to measure goals A, B, and D, and the statute and the state process said, no, you have to measure F through X, you wouldn't be in a position to be very efficient. So we decided that it made more sense to hold off on that performance measurement piece until we understand a little bit more about what the state's requiring, who can provide that service, and then go back and align it with your strategic plan. I don't expect that it's going to be too far out of alignment, but it's a little risky if it's not, and I don't want you to have to be held to something that you're not comfortable project. So that's kind of where you're at with performance measures. I really suggest that because they have significant value, suggest that you kind of wait to see what happens with that state process before you continue forward. So there's a bit of a dialogue about that in the last part of your plan. I'm going to stop screen sharing there because I'd like to entertain questions and see if you want to make a motion to adopt the plan.
Okay, before I open this for public comment, Chief, do you have anything you'd care to add? We'll all get a chance later on too.
I've obviously been spending a lot of time in this strategic plan with Dr. Banyan and staff. It was kind of a unique time for me transitioning into the fire chief role because a lot of the things that I thought of that were going to be my primary areas to address were supported by data when I got into this plan. So it was actually very helpful to confirm my diagnosis as a, to use a better term, of the organization and where we're at from a, external and internal standpoint. So I stand behind the document. I think it hits several areas that we need to either work on and measure better or perform better at, and overall they're good goals. So I support the document, sir.
Great. And thank you, Dr. Banyan. I forgot to thank you. That nice presentation. At this time, I'd like to open this to public comments. If public would like to make a comment, please hold that to 3 minutes or less. Sir? No, okay. Then I'll close that portion. So at this time, any questions or comments? Who'd like to go first? Jim?
I'm incredibly impressed with the depth and of this plan. It is extremely professionally well done, and I want to thank you for your incredible effort, Doctor. And I'm very impressed that the fire district has a plan that's this well thought out and this professional. When I came on to the board, this was all, I learned all this, it was all new to me. As a citizen, you have an idea that they're doing okay, but you don't really know until you have an opportunity to serve in a capacity like the Fire Commission to get a little insight into exactly how professional and how well managed your organization is. So this has been extremely helpful. I did have one question, Doctor, about community input. Can you give me just a little insight or give us a little insight into how you accomplished the community input and what your perception of that process was?
Yeah, great, and thank you, I appreciate your comments. So there were several different, I like using several different approaches to community input because sometimes you can get a deeper dive, sometimes you can get broadly what the community is thinking. So the community survey is a way to get sort of a broad perspective. Typically, you'll see some diversity of opinion when you look at that online survey. So to develop that and work on the survey, I don't know if anybody saw, I showed up on the Fun Beach Talk radio, and that was fun to kind of generate some input, and it was also advertised through the Breeze newspapers, and I know Jennifer Campbell sent it out to various constituencies and put it on Facebook, etc. So the way I look at that online survey is it's one piece of information among many pieces of information. And so that's why I like using some of those focus groups, because the focus group, I can understand a little bit more about what people are saying. And rather than me scripting a question, typically it's something that they generate. So I had a variety of different focus groups, one with just citizens, and then the other focus groups were with collaborating public agencies, which was very helpful to understand kind of the public agency sort of perspective and public service perspective with the district. Some members of the town also showed up, and I had a nonprofit focus group and then another focus group with businesses, and so really tried to get the major, I guess, constituencies and stakeholders of the district. You know, it's always, when there's no news, you see people not showing up because there's no news, there's nothing to be mad at. So it's always a challenge to get public input around the district because there's nothing there, no one's mad at anything. So I have to work pretty hard to get the feedback that I do. And that's why I say it was overwhelmingly positive, because people show up and they say, we're good, we like the fire district, we'd like to learn more about it. Commissioner, I don't know if I answered any of your questions, so.
You did very well, thank you.
Okay, anything, Jim,
That-
anything else?
That's it, thank you
Okay,
very
well,
much, Doctor.
Jackie?
All right. Hi, Dr. Banyan, good to see you again, and thank you for another excellent report. Just, as you know, I first participated in this as a resident before I was on the commission, so I got to see how you worked through that whole process, and really enjoyed doing that. And then, of course, working with you as the chamber president was really enlightening, and we shared a lot of data back and forth with that. And then sitting here now as a commissioner and being able to participate on the next iteration of this, it's really great. And you do an excellent job with this. Truly, I mirror what Commissioner Nichols said. It's so much good data, and it feels nice to know that people aren't showing up. So thank you. Thank you to all of you who have worked on this and everyone in the department, and it's because of their efforts that we have a relatively quiet meeting today. So thank you to that, and I look forward to having Chief put this into action now.
Great, thank you, and I do want to say a lot of you commissioners helped distribute the survey and helped generate community input, and that is invaluable. I can't tell you how important that is. They don't really care if I'm saying come participate, but they do care when you ask them. So huge. So I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Okay, Ron?
Good evening, Doctor. I support what Commissioner Nichols and Lezak said. It's a very fine report. I was glad to participate in it and, help with the dialogue and to get to where we are. I think this is something that's not just going to be put on a shelf. It's something we can use, look back on in 2025, see where we're at, and continue to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And I really do hope you use it. I mean, mark on it. Make notes, sticky notes, tabs. Yeah.
Okay, Ron, that it?
Yes.
Okay, John?
I mirror everybody else's thoughts. First of all, a big thanks to yourself and your team. Also our community members who participated in this, along with the staff. The scope and the detail is very broad and in-depth, and it's all good information to help us guide the district for its future. Just a big thank you. Good job.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and I'll reiterate what everyone else said, but, I think when we look at the SWOT information, for example, with the threats and things like that, I think it very accurately portrays the situation we have here in the district. And I'm not sure if we had double the amount of responses that it would be any different, because I think it accurately portrays the issues we're dealing with in terms of staff and money and everything else. So I think, it's very well done, put together well. And I looked at things like the stakeholders and the innovative programs were mentioned in there. And I think Chief Martin has already come up with some innovative programs to attack some of those issues, some of those weaknesses or threats. And I look forward to many more of those. Very exciting when you come up with a plan, you say, well, what about this? Do you think we can try this? And I think absolutely. let's try anything that we can afford that is going to move us forward. So I appreciate the efforts. It looks as though you've already looked at the report and you're saying, okay, this is what we need to do to move us forward. And I appreciate that and applaud you for that. So I totally support this. And as I've mentioned before, when we did this the first time, it's the first time in my career that we've ever done strategic plan that people actually read and actually did something with it and looked at areas to improve it and actually did the metrics or the whatever you want to call those, to measure what it is we're doing and are we doing the right thing. So I applaud you, Dr. Banyan, and of course, the chief and his crew for doing all this. So with that, are there any other comments? Chief, would you like to add something?
Mr. Chair, one of the things I just want to reinforce, Dr. Banyan's format, I've looked at a lot of strategic plans.
So
One of the nice things about the format that we've selected and Dr. Banyan provides to us is it's very easy for staff to use and reference. I know in our previous strategic plan, you're able to print it up, you're able to mark it up, you're able to find information, and it's very easy to use and to keep us on track. So kudos, Dr. Banyan. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and one last thing from me is that I think a 3-year plan makes a lot of sense. Many times a district would go with 5-year plans. That's with the rate of change with things such as COVID. When we wrote the other one, there was no COVID. And so I think with the speed of society anymore, a 3-year plan makes more sense. And I know you can always adapt it, but 5 years out, there's no way to predict what's going to happen out there. So I think this is very well done. Okay, is there any last comments? If not, then I'd like to make a motion for the commissioners to adopt the 2022 through 2025 strategic plan as presented by Dr. Banyan and Chief. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time out, and it appears as though it's still daylight wherever you are. So, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, and really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. So I really appreciate your time and your energy on this. So very
Thank you.
good, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, approval to surplus 2 district assets. Chief, would you want to present that for us?
Yes, once again, Commissioners, what you have before you under this item is the district surplus list. Many of these things we've talked about in previous meetings, like the heart monitors, ventilators. If you remember when we purchased our new Zoll cardiac monitors, we had a trade-in value. We have added 2 additional assets which staff have identified either are no longer serviceable or we have no anticipated needs for. That was a Polaris vehicle which is simply not serviceable that we're adding to the surplus list. And then we're also adding a 2017 Ford Explorer, which has relatively low miles for the vehicle and we have no anticipated needs. So with the used car market and fire service needing vehicles, we figured it would be a good time, since we have no future needs for that vehicle, to try to surplus it now rather than 2 or 3 years down when the market may cool, so we could get top dollar for that. So we're seeking your approval, consideration and approval at district asset list surplus.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll take any public comments. Seeing no or hearing no public comments, we'll close that portion. Discussion. John?
Just a quick question. The Polaris we're looking at What's its, what was its role before it's no longer useful?
That was actually an alternative response vehicle that the district several years ago fabricated on our own. It was the first iteration of the beach rescue ambulance that we recently acquired. We've just had several mechanical issues. You know, it's out of service more than it's in service, and it's at a point where I'm concerned about putting staff in it. The last time we had it in service with the boat races, and I was driving it, and the engine is under such strain, it was getting so hot that the seat was melting and burning my backside, so, yeah.
Heated seats.
Time to
Yes,
go.
yes, so,
Helpful up north, not so much here.
yes. And our plan is, Chief Worth is actually gonna trailer it to a generalized government auction to recoup whatever we can from that auction.
Great, thank you. Okay, questions, comments? Jim, you want to go first?
None.
None? Jackie? None? Ron, would you, well, go ahead, John.
I've got nothing. I looked at it.
Okay,
Good to go.
we're covering the
Surplus.
the capital asset surplus. Any questions?
No,
about
no,
that?
no question.
Okay. And I have no questions. So this time, do we have a motion to surplus the assets?
So moved.
And that's as provided on surplus list 2022 through 02, dispose of the assets as recommended by staff and in accordance with all the laws and rules of the state of Florida. Now, would you like to make a
I
motion?
will make that motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Second that. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Excuse me. The next item is fire chief remarks.
Well, thank you for another great commission meeting, everyone. Really appreciate all your time, mentorship, and guidance when I seek some advice from all of you, so thank you. As we conclude our first month in 2022, obviously, we've all seen that it has not been a very good month for fire safety, and it shows that we have a lot of risk reduction work to do in our nation, in our state, in our industry, to educate people that fire is still a very real threat and poses a real danger to every community. Also would like to express our heartfelt condolences to the Baltimore City for the loss of 3 firefighters in the line of duty recently. With that said, you know, I would like to thank our life safety staff for their continued diligence. They do a lot of good work out there. Our folks out in the street who are so patient and love to educate whenever they get an opportunity, so I want to thank them. And of course, I want to thank our amazing staff for all they do every single day to support our mission and accomplish our goals. Thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and now commissioners' remarks. Ron, would you care to go first?
Another good meeting. I'm glad we were able to get the strategic plan taken care of. Congratulations. That's all I have.
Thank you. Jackie?
I echo Commissioner Fleming, thank you, and yet again, a thank you to our team for the assist with the tornadoes a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. I'm hearing things through the community that the response was excellent, and the caring and compassion was even above that. So thank you to everyone who did that, and then those who gave time past that to go out and help those folks out there. So that's all I have.
Okay, Jim?
I just wanted to say thank you for a great meeting and the work that you've done with Dr. Banyan and a great report. I also wanted to thank you personally for keeping the commission appraised of issues as they evolve, whether it was responding to the tornadoes or other situations that come up from time to time, so that as a commissioner, I feel like I could respond to us. If a citizen called and said, what the heck's going on, I might have some idea what is happening, and I'd be able to convey that. So I thank you very much for that.
I think we all agree to that comment. John?
What's left to say? Again,
I've got something.
I would like to thank all the team and also, again, the community for their involvement with the strategic plan. I think we'd all, love to see more participation as the years go on. And I don't know how the numbers compared this to last, but it's tough to get people to volunteer their time to say nice things. They're always happy to say mean things. But it's tough, and I again applaud the team and Dr. Banyan again for putting it together. It's a great tool for the team to guide us, and it's important. And even though it's just a stack of paper, it's a lot of data and feelings and emotion from the community and the team members within the organization. So looking forward to putting it to use in the coming years.
Ron, do you know what the response rate was, the difference this year versus last time?
Do you remember, Jane? I think it was a little bit below what we did last time.
Really?
You know, slightly. It wasn't dramatic. You know, she tried a few different things to get participation, but didn't get the response she was anticipating.
Interesting.
Of course, like with everything that the coronavirus has caused issues, and the timing too. I would recommend next time we do it maybe in February. Now that's in 2025, but whoever is still here, that you do it perhaps in February when
During our
We have
season.
more
everybody's
snowbirds in town and
here.
whatnot.
Yeah, because around the Christmas time, as you know, people come and go, and
They have other things on their mind.
they have other things on their mind, and to go to a meeting is probably not one of them.
We'll definitely be looking at that next year when we have our seasonal residents back and our full-time residents back. So it may delay the process past our timeline we've kind of established, but you know, I think it would be well worth that effort to try to get more community response.
Well, and as, you know, and of course, that date is not a finish line, it's just a part of the whole
We
process.
can always start earlier.
We could start earlier. Yes, we could, as a matter of fact. That's a good point. Okay, anything else? that you said?
Thank you.
Okay, other than what everyone else has said, I want to thank Captain Joe DeVito that, and I want to thank the chief for having now a couple of our firefighters present articles that make, you know, rather than just coming from one person, it's coming from the people that are out there doing the actual work. And Joe, it made me think about, you know, closing your door, your bedroom door when you go to sleep. Because unless you're sprinklered, if you don't have a sprinkler system, you know, if you leave the door open, that fire is going to spread. And I never crossed my mind until I read his article. So, you know, thank you for encouraging our firefighters to share their knowledge with the rest of us and maybe save somebody's life. So, thank you. I have nothing else. Is there anything else? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for being the
Cameraman.